TCU basketball, men's basketball is 1-0 after a dominant 105-59 win over Florida A&M. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, also on your favorite podcast platform. We're going to call this a bonus podcast. This is just basketball talk, about 10 to 12 minutes of reaction from TCU men's basketball. Jamie Dixon's team starting the season 1-0 with a 105-59 victory over the Florida A&M Rattlers. I'll have the show later today with Matt Jennings about TCU football and where they are with Sonny Dykes coming off the loss against Baylor, where they can go the rest of the season. But it's that weird time of year where we got overlap between football and hoops. So let's break it down. TCU wins 105-59. Leading scorer for the Frogs last night was Vashawn Alette, who came off the bench and scored 20 points. He's got an interesting story. If you missed in the offseason, Alette was at Old Dominion last year. And he's a dude that can really fill it up from a scoring perspective. He averaged last season 17 points a game in 19 games. He started 18 of those games, had a huge game in a tournament against TCU during non-conference play. And then he was let go of the team, kicked off the team, essentially. He was their leading scorer for the Monarchs. Old Dominion went through a coaching change in the middle of the year. Don't know all the details as to why he was asked to leave, but he did. Spent the rest of the year off the basketball team and has now ended up at TCU. I'm sure TCU knew about that, and they did their due diligence in trying to figure out what the reasons were behind it. But bottom line is, he's a Frog now, and he's a dude that can score. He's a guy that can just go get buckets. And that's something that TCU didn't have last year. Like, they didn't have a guy really who they could drop the ball down to when things broke down and say, hey, go get us a bucket. Jameer Nelson Jr. was that dude at times. They tried to run the offense through Emmanuel Miller. But to have a guard who can go score and go fill it up, that's a big advantage. I don't know if he'll be coming off the bench all year or if they'll sort of toggle him between a starter and bench player. But it's nice to have a person off the bench who can be instant offense for you. Listen, I'm not going to come out here and be like, this means this team is amazing. The opponent is the opponent. Florida A&M is breaking in a new coach. They won 6 games last year. This is a game that TCU should win and should win handily. Here are the things that encourage me, though. One, this game was never in doubt. Shaquille O'Neal, who is Shaq's son, and if you were at the game last night, let me know if you saw Shaq. I was watching on TV and I saw he was courtside. He scored the first bucket of the game for Florida A&M, but really after that, TCU completely dominated. I think they went on a 12-0 run after that, and it was never in doubt. And in the past few seasons, I mean, they lost a game to Northwestern State a couple of years ago. They were in a battle with, I think, Texas Southern in the season opener a few years back. Last season, they had some up and down moments in non-conference play, and against opponents like this, there were certainly halves where they struggled, but it wasn't even a situation where in the first half it was kind of back and forth, or even in the first 10 minutes where you're like, okay, we're trying to get in rhythm, we're trying to shoot the ball, and nothing's falling, and this is a little closer than you thought. It was a dominant performance from start to finish. They got over 100 points, which was exciting. And I think overall the offense just looked better. One reason for that is this team has a true point guard now in Frankie Collins. Frankie Collins is a transfer. He was at Arizona State the last few seasons. Before that, he was at Michigan. Veteran player. Not someone who lights it up from a scoring perspective, but that's not really what TCU is asking him to do in this offense. He is more of an old school, traditional floor general, if you want to refer to him as that. But he played 26 minutes. He was 6 of 10 from the field with 14 points. More importantly, had 5 assists and 7 rebounds. And the team as a whole had 29 assists. The ball was moving around well last night. Like it looked like a very competent offense in the half court. Yes, competition is what it is. But TCU last year was not a good half court team. I mean, a lot of their offense was based on, hey, let's try to get out and run and beat that initial defense, find some mismatches, get out in transition, make things happen. This was not a team that excelled when they had to run sets and get in the traditional, half-court style of play. They looked good last night in those situations. Ernest Uday had a nice day. I mean, I didn't see anything different from him offensively. He was mainly a rim runner who was getting easy buckets in pick and roll situations off lobs. But I think the encouraging thing is he just in general, the offense looked a lot better in pick and roll situations. Last year it was the Texas game. TCU got off to a great start against UT at home. I don't remember how big of a lead they had, but Texas called the timeout, and TCU had just completely blitzed them early on. And I was like, all right, maybe they're going to go win this ball game. This would be huge. They ended up losing that game. And something that Texas figured out that everyone else after that really pressed TCU on was in those pick and roll situations, especially when you're setting the screen far away from the basket, they were just blitzing the ball handlers and forcing them to make decisions, and it caused a lot of turnovers. TCU had 6 turnovers, I believe, last night. I mean, no matter who you're playing, that's a really good and really clean game offensively. Did an outstanding job taking care of the ball. And Jameer Nelson Jr., I mean, he's more of a scorer. Avery Anderson, in his career before he got to TCU, he was more of a guy that you would consider in that traditional point guard mold. But both those guys struggled to really run the offense and keep things at a good pace and protect the ball. And it just looks like the guards, and it's not only Frankie Collins, even though I think he made a big difference. I mean, Noah Reynolds has come in, and he's known as a sharpshooter who can be a spot-up type of guy beyond the arc, but he also did a really nice job passing last night. He ended up with 7 assists, which led the team. Micah Robinson, one of the young guys that they like, he came in. He only played 17 minutes, but he had 5 assists in those 17 minutes. They rebounded the ball well. Jace Posey looked good off the bench. He had 11 points. Jace Posey and Isaiah Manning are the 2 players that redshirted last year. They're redshirt freshmen. They spent a lot of time in practice trying to work on their game. They're going to be a big part of this team. He had 11 points, 4 of 6 from the field, 3 of 4 from three-point range, and looked outstanding shooting the ball. Micah Robinson, I talked about him. He made an impact. Isaiah Manning had a tough night shooting, 4 of 11 from the field, 2 of 7 from 3, but made an impact and still had 10 points. A very balanced night overall. I've really liked what I saw from Brendan Wenzel, who's come over from Wyoming. He had 10 points yesterday. Good spot-up shooter, it looks like, and it both in the scrimmage against Arkansas and in the game against Florida A&M just showed an ability to kind of do a lot of different things. Some stuff that shows up in the stat sheet, some stuff that doesn't, but hustle plays, rebounding, sort of a Swiss Army knife type. They needed a guy like that to fill in the gaps that some of the players that transferred out, like I think TCU made some upgrades in some ways, hopefully, but Jacoby Coles is a guy who can score. Micah Peavy is a dude who can do a lot of different things. So there's a ton of production that you're replacing on this roster. And at least in the season opener, TCU looked good. Some news that came down from the press conference, R.J. Jones, who's a transfer from Kansas State and was a really highly rated guy out of high school, he's going to redshirt according to Jamie Dixon. They're also going to redshirt Ashton Simmons, who's a combo guard, true freshman that they like. The R.J. Jones redshirt situation surprised me a little bit just because he's known as a shooter and as a dude that can score. So you could use him on the court, I would think, but maybe he's just not quite ready to play significant minutes yet. Another thing that impressed me offensively is they just shot the ball really well. I mean, they were outstanding from beyond the arc. And, yeah, a lot of those were open threes, but TCU's a team that has struggled to hit open threes in the past few years. And certainly last year, shooting was something that was at a premium. So if they can do that and space the floor better, it opens up the entirety of their offense. I still don't really have a feel for what they're going to do at the center position behind Uday. David Punch, another one of their freshmen, he got some good minutes yesterday, and he's very tall, very athletic. The team as a whole just looks really athletic, which is typical of a Jamie Dixon team. I thought they played defense with great effort and intensity, and that was something last year that they didn't do super well. So that was encouraging to see. Florida A&M at one point late in the first half, I believe, switched to a zone defense, and it threw them off for a little bit, but they figured it out. I thought they were still moving the ball really well. There was some interior passing that was encouraging. They looked like after a beat, they kind of knew, okay, this is how we adjust to this defense. And last year, with their struggles in the half court, that was a big problem. If teams would throw a different look at them, it was a big struggle for them to correct and figure out what they needed to do. So all in all, about everything you would want and should expect against an opponent like that. They will play Florida Gulf Coast on Friday night at 7 p.m. at Shalimar Arena. Then their next game will be next Tuesday against Texas State in Fort Worth. Then they go on the road to play Michigan. So some good teams this year. They're playing non-conference. Michigan, Santa Clara. They'll get, depending on the tournament situation, they'll get either Colorado State or Washington. They'll play Xavier and they'll play Vanderbilt all before Big 12 play starts. So we should get a good look at like, okay, these are the guys that are going to contribute. This is the strengths and weaknesses of this team. And it'll be fun to watch them play. The women, they kick off play tonight as well. They will tip off at 6:30 at home against Houston Christian. A lot of excitement around them as Mark Campbell takes the court with Haley Van Lith and Maddie Shear, Sedona Prince and Madison Connor, the returners, and a lot of other players who are looking to make a big impact. One more note on the football side, Dana Holgerson is leaving TCU to go to Nebraska. And that might shock you because it's the middle of the season. I'll go more in depth on this on Wednesday. My initial read on it, and I guess Sonny will probably be asked about it in the press conference this afternoon. My initial read on it is I think with these staffs getting bigger, so Dana was brought in, if you remember, to work with the defense. And he was going to help Andy Avalos with some advanced scouting, like, hey, here's what offenses are going to do down the road. Here's what offenses are doing against you, et cetera. I feel like with these staffs getting bigger, some of these analysts don't have much to do once the season starts. And it sounds like this role at Nebraska is a consultant role that could morph into an opportunity to be an OC. I wouldn't worry too much about it. It is strange. Honestly, though, I don't know how much of an impact Dana's had on this team. Some of the games that I felt like he would be super helpful in, like, for instance, Houston, that didn't appear to be the case. So best wishes to him. Hope he finds what he wants. He wants to get back on the field, obviously, and it appears that he'll have a better opportunity to do that in Nebraska than he did at TCU. But I'll have more on that tomorrow. I'll have an episode of Matt Jennings up later today talking TCU football. Wanted to get some Hoots reaction up, though. Let me know what you thought about that game. Locked on Horned Frogs, it's your team every day. We are free and available wherever it is you get your podcast. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel or on your favorite podcast platform.